Ashes discovered in soil that go back a million years. The question is, how did those ashes get into the soil in a cave system? Now, outside of the cave system, you could say, yeah, fires, they occur naturally. That's part of nature. But in a cave, how would a fire begin deep in a cave? The conclusion here is it needs to be purposeful. Whoever was using that cave was creating fires there as well. So the next step became, can we find any evidence of cooking? Can we find, for example, bone in the ashes? And that's exactly what they were able to discover. Discovered burned bones and those ashes. So now, if you think about it, what's the likelihood of a fire starting inside of a cave, deep inside of a cave, and an animal running into that fire and just hanging out there and dying? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So once we put these pieces together, we have to say by 1 million years ago, yes, we do have some good evidence that suggests that Homo erectus, it was cooking, and yeah, it's the master chef. Let's move to the next slide. Here's an example of this cave system. So when I said fire isn't going to start naturally here, I think you get a good impression of what I'm talking about. Somebody needed to move into this cave system and begin to use fire. And that's the other component. Fire allowed our hominin ancestors to move into regions like this. Without light, a cave is pretty scary. I've done some caving in the past, and my headlamp's gone out, and it's darn dark inside of there. There's no way I would move into a cave, progress into a cave without a really good lamp system. The same thing goes, I think, for our hominin ancestors. They would have had fire. It would have allowed them to move into these caves and start to occupy them. Let's move to the next slide. So a few questions here. Let's go through these. What species and at what point of time in our past used fire first? This is a great question for a test. And what we're going to say is it's Homo erectus, and it began to use fire around 1 million years ago. That evidence comes from the Wonderwork caves, so I might want to put that on the side. With respect to the second question, with the use of fire, where did hominins begin to sleep and why? Well, we've also touched on this. Dwelling in caves, it starts to become more common. Fire provides more control over the environment, warmth, and light. So now we're starting to create more comfortable environments and also offer ourselves some protection from the elements or predators outside of those caves. How did cooking impact our consumption and digestion of food? So now this goes back to Wrangham's research where he said cooking made us human. Cooking increased digestible protein. In the end, protein, it supplies our tissues. It allows them to grow while glucose is used by the brain. So over time, our brains got larger. And the other interesting thing about cooking, aside from creating more digestible protein or denaturing the proteins, it also detoxifies poisonous plants and therefore increases mineral and vitamin absorption. So cooking is a really good thing. If you look at any other individuals around the world that haven't cooked, you also have to have special adaptations in the stomach as well. For example, Inuit, they ate, for example, raw meat for a variety of reasons. And one of the more important reasons was they didn't have access to vitamin C. We do not synthesize our own vitamin C, so you've got to get it from somewhere else. And the Inuit got around this problem by eating raw meat. Fourth question, did the use of fire impact human migration patterns? If so, explain why and how. So here, what I'd want to say is it provides a mechanism to cope with cooler climes. And I'm going to leave the rest of this up to you. I'd like you to think back, did fire create an opportunity to move into different environments? And why do you think so based upon the material that you've been asked to read and the material that we've discussed? So that's where we'll leave it for now. In our next segment, we'll pick up and talk a little bit about the migration of First Nations people to the Americas and how all of that took place. Until then, take care.